NPower is pleased to recognize the tremendous accomplishments of Dave Steward and John Thompson.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Shall we chat?
Yes.
All right. I noticed that you two were kind of pointing at each other. I'm sure you probably have known each other for a while. Tell me how you guys got to know each other.
Well, you know, one of the things that I've been admiring John from afar for many, many years. And so he thinks that he kind of mentored me along the way, just seeing what he was doing, what he's doing in security space, the other spaces, and the innovation. And I just admire what he was doing also in the community as well. And so I want to meet him. I want to spend time with him. I want to get to know him and how he navigated through corporate America to get in the position that he is in today, because I know it was very, very difficult. And so I made it a point to want to meet him.
Nice.
Well, mine's the reverse story. I wouldn't be where I am without the help of Dave. When I joined Symantec many years ago, Dave was running WWT, and we were having tough times in the federal government, trying to navigate our way through the system to get them to embrace our technologies. And were it not for Dave, I probably wouldn't be here.
Wow, that's good. Yeah. So it seems like every time we turn around, we're hearing about another tech company. It feels like such a colossal industry, and you look around this room, and clearly, you know, there are so many aspects to it. And we talked about the fact that tonight's theme is an evening of action. So it's all about what actions you have or you can take to foster change and innovation across the sector. So what actions have you each taken throughout your careers to advance innovation? I'll start with you.
One of the things for me was just taking the first step, you know, of believing that it's possible, and having a vision that's bigger than you know, than you could possibly ever think, dream, or pray for, is how I view that. And so faith without corresponding actions is dead. So take the step in faith to actually realize the dream and vision that you have. And I've always been a risk taker. That's just what I do, and I've been doing it for many, many years now. And so I don't want someone's opinion to be my reality. And so a lot of people's opinions, and you begin to really realize who people are by their opinions about what can't happen. And so I want to minimize being around people like that and focus on people who are as excited as I am about the future of our communities, our business, and this nation. Diversity is an integral part of this nation's future, and we have to be a part of taking necessary steps for that to happen.
We're going to dig into that. What would you say as far as advancing innovation?
Well, no one would ever associate me with innovation before moving to Silicon Valley. I spent 27 years, 9 months, and 13 days working at IBM. And it was a wonderful experience, make no mistake about it. But the roles I had there weren't necessarily about innovation. They were all about execution and operations. And it was only when I joined Symantec in 1999 that innovation became the forefront of what I had to think about as the leader of that company, because we were going through a rather significant transformation. And fortunately, because we thought about it, we were able to move the company from $600 million to $6 billion in revenues over a 10-year period. And so innovation is everything for me at this point in my life. That's why I joined Lightspeed, because it's all about working with young, brilliant entrepreneurs, or older, brilliant entrepreneurs, who have an interest in doing something new and different.
One thing I enjoy about this, I enjoyed it last year and I'm already enjoying it already, is hearing your words of wisdom and hearing more about your journey. We can all learn, even if we're not in the tech space, right? So what would you say are some of your greatest career inspirations and obstacles?
As I think about this, the biggest obstacle is yourself. What you cannot do, and listening to people who tell you what you can't do. You know, you think about this. So 5 people and 4,000 square feet in St. Louis, and you're black, and you're calling this company Worldwide Technology. There was a lot of people who laughed about that during that time, because they would show up and they would say, well, this is worldwide technology and looks like Weldon Parkway technology, 127. And they would count the number of cars in the parking lot.
Wow.
And so that there's a favorite scripture of mine that says, call those things that be not as though they were. And it says, my people perish for the lack of vision. And that was a bold vision, of possibilities, and then convince people to come along with you around that vision, and be excited about it, be passionate about it, be committed to it, and so forth as well. And be prepared to sacrifice and commit it all, and that doesn't happen without having a good spouse willing to do that along with you as well. We were crazy because Mitty said, they won't let you do that. How many times has anybody in this room heard that before? And so overcoming that is a huge, huge issue.
What would you say? Greatest inspiration and obstacles?
Well, I'll deal with the obstacle issue. The biggest obstacle for me from a career perspective was me. When I joined IBM, I had an 800-pound afro, a big mustache. I wore 2 sister suits, Polly and Esther. And
I know that one.
And they weren't blue or gray.
That's funny.
They had to be another color. And it was the cultural assimilation into the company that was the most significant challenge for me. And I can vividly remember waking up one morning or in the office one morning about 6 years into my career, and I looked around the office and I said, my gosh, no one here looks anything like me. And it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. It had everything to do with my inability or unwillingness at that point in time to blend with the culture of a company that was, in fact, at that moment in time, the leader in tech. And so I woke up one day and says, okay, I got to change something. So I went to Brooks Brothers. And I bought white button-down shirts, tassel loafers, all the crap that IBMers wore. And I only own one white shirt today, and I'm proud of that.
Wow, that's good.
But I'm equally proud of what IBM was able to get me to wake up and recognize that cultural assimilation into any organization is as important as your ability to execute once you get there. And if you can't make that cultural assimilation, your ability to execute is going to be significantly impacted as well.
Interesting. Let's talk about diversity. There continues to be concern about attracting and retaining diverse workers. We also know that diverse teams are credited with being more creative and more productive. So what are your thoughts on the power of diversity, and what must tech companies do to become more intentionally diverse? I think the word intentional is important there.
It's for every business, it's a business imperative. You just heard a few moments ago that the lack of talent for this year is going to be significant. And it's about supply and demand. We are all looking for talent, period. And our ability to be able to attract it, our ability to be able to create it, our ability to be able to keep it are going to be pivotal to our long-term viability and success. And by 2040, minorities will be the majority. And so if we're not developing that talent, who's going to develop that talent? From my standpoint is that there's a little selfishness in this as well, because at the end of the day, I have to look at this company 15, 20, 30 years from now. And if we're going to have the necessary talent, we're going to attract the necessary talent with the right set of core values, we're going to have to create it in partnership with the NPower and GLF and BEA and ITSMF and all the other organizations that we're engaged, involved in a meaningful way, financially as well as with our time, talent, and resource.
It takes both, doesn't it?
It does. The tech industry today is critically dependent, more so than ever before, on human capital. And if you were to look at where our country is juxtaposition to China, We produce somewhere between 50 to 100,000 engineers a year in college graduates. They produce 1 million. And so while we are very much focused on diversity and inclusion, which is a fundamental issue that the industry has to solve, we have to solve the core problem, which is if we don't have enough talent, we're just not going to be competitive in the global economy. That being said, the only way we're going to improve the talent base in this industry is if we open the aperture on diversity, that we become more committed to the idea that we have to have more women, more people of color as a part of the team. Otherwise, 10 years from now, this industry will not have the same global perspective in the US that it does today.
That's good. If we take, go ahead, yeah. So if we take it a step further, I know that NPower, with the support of City Foundation, launched a multi-year initiative to help women of color advance in careers of tech. So the two of you are obviously leaders in this industry. What do you think it will take for women of color to have the same opportunities as men to enter, and not just enter the door, and that's in my industry too, all of these places, but to go beyond that and to grow and to thrive?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say that, again, I think it starts with the individual. I mean, they have to have the confidence. We have to give them the confidence that all things are possible, and images like you and others who are in leadership role, setting the model and an example of possibilities for them as well. And they see themselves bigger than themselves, and getting engaged and involved in how you build the wonderful relationships. And there are people that will help you along the way. If you have a vision, you have a mission and a strategy, people will help you along the way. All you have to do is ask, and I encourage young women to think about themselves a little bit differently than they think about themselves today. As I think about a favorite scripture of mine is Ephesians 3:20 says, "Glory be to God that works within us, that can do exceedingly above all that you can think, dream, or pray for." When I heard that verse, it resonated with me that all things are possible, and I have the tools and ability to be able to exceedingly go above and beyond all that you can think, dream, or pray for. I would suggest that women concentrate on that they're bigger than they are today, that they are truly the endless as possible for them.
That's good. What would you say?
Well, I would say that it's been an amazing experience to join Lightspeed, because now all of a sudden, guess what? I have more African American female entrepreneurs reaching out to me than I ever knew existed. And it is amazing how many young Black or African American women are in fact starting companies. I literally connected one this morning to the M12 or Microsoft Ventures team because she's looking for capital. Now, while Microsoft would be interested, so would Lightspeed. And there are so many young African American females out there today who have an idea, they just don't have capital. And we have to figure out how we get capital to them in a more open way, because that will accelerate the diversity transition that goes on in this industry.
This is a nice segue. Let's talk about startups for a moment. WWT at one time was a startup, obviously, and is now leading the way. How did you do it? And that's a loaded question, but if you were to give us some bullet points of it for people in this room who are thinking about even having a startup and we're streaming live, how did you do it?
I would say my background has a lot to do with why I decided that I wanted to be in business one day. I had a father that was somewhat of an entrepreneur as a result of out of necessity. So there were jobs that he couldn't have back in the 50s and 60s, and he was the first entrepreneur I ever saw because he had to feed 8 children. And I wanted to be like my dad. And so after going to college and working for corporate America and navigating through all of that, I decided I was going to be in business one day. And one day I decided, well, I'm going to be in business one day. And so how was I going to do that with no money? So I ended up convincing a guy in 1983 to sell me his business for nothing down. I leveraged his business to give him a down payment, and he carried back the rest. And years later, they said, well, you did a leverage buyout. I said, I did. I thought it was
What
just
is that?
I thought it was just a brother with no money. But you just figure it out. You figure it out and have the courage to walk in faith. My first bank was Stockyard Bank of St. Joseph, Missouri. I didn't go to the big banks because they wouldn't have me, didn't have enough of anything that you could leverage to do business with the Bank of Americas these days. And my second bank was Bank of Wathena, Kansas. And so it's doing the unusual and connecting to, areas that you need resources and whether it's capital or anything else, and stretching beyond the status quo, which I was able to do pretty effectively as a result of the environment I grew up in.
If you were to give us quick bullet points, and then we'll wrap. Last thoughts.
Well, like Dave, my father was the inspiration for me as well. And while he was the first African-American letter carrier in Palm Beach County, he was an entrepreneur too, because he built apartments and single-family homes in the African-American community that he rented out to many, many people. And my task was to clean them up anytime someone moved out. And so what he taught me was the importance of follow-through and execution and dedication, because he never stopped working. He would get up at 4:30 in the morning to be in the office at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and he would work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And that's the model that I got taught, and therefore that's kind of the model that I execute now at 70 years old.
You can embrace it. You can say it. You can say it. You've earned it. All right.
A young 70 mile.
A young 70. Let's, and not just polyester suits. You got a lot of suits. Let's close the conversation by connecting back to why we're here. Obviously, that's to support NPower. I know you have a newer relationship with NPower. I heard you had the chance to visit one of the classrooms in Brooklyn. Obviously, you have been a long supporter of their work. Talk about why their work finally is important to you, and why the companies in this room should look at their pipeline of fresh talent, whether it's young adults or veterans.
For me, is that either you do it or the resources just aren't going to be available for us. And so, act now. Faith without corresponding actions is dead. So, I would say that each and every one of you need to think about, the future of your business, the future of or your communities, and the future of this country. It's dependent upon the work that we do today. The seeds that we sow today will flourish into huge return on that investment in the years to come. If we don't do that work, who's going to do it? And so I challenge you to take action today, not yesterday or tomorrow, but today. It's going to make a huge difference for tomorrow.
Well, I think if you think about the future of tech, juxtaposition to where it was 48 years ago when I joined the industry, it is light years beyond that. But guess what? Over the next 20 years, it will move further and faster than it has over the last 40 plus. And so the real issue for us is to have a tech industry that's more inclusive, more embracing of people of color, people of diversity, people who have a different point of view about how technology ought to be used. Think about it. We're dealing with facial recognition technology today. Gee, that could be applied in a way that is not constructive or helpful at all. And we ought to make sure that we are smart enough about that we don't allow the notion of innovation to get in the way of diversity and inclusion. And that is a risk that we face, quite frankly.
Thank you. Thank you.